Fintech Saudi YouTube channel, which has all previous sessions, including last year and the year before. So if you want to dig deeper into fintech and the different sectors in fintech, feel free to visit the channel. The Telegram group, super important. We keep you updated, but also it's a channel that we use throughout the year to let you know about the different activities, different events, different trainings that might be happening. Obviously, our website, the link to our website and resources are available. Muhammad, soon, very, very soon, we're in the final stages of finalizing the 2024 report. So very, very soon. Recordings can be found again in the Telegram group for anyone who is asking. The Telegram group link is in the resource section. Hi, Muhammad, to you as well. Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in exactly 2 minutes. I hope you're all excited. We're, believe it or not, week 5 now. Week 5, 3 more weeks to go. I don't know if I'm happy or sad. I'm going to miss these sessions with all of you every Tuesday. Fills my Tuesday nights. For questions related to certificates of attendance, you can find those in the FAQ in the resource section. All right, I'm going to get started now. Let's turn into the fun stuff. Enough of this housekeeping items. Or actually, before we jump there, make sure that we see you at Money 2020 happening 15, 16, and 17 of September. If you haven't registered, now is the time to register. We're locked in to be there for sure. We will be in Hall 1. Please visit us in Hall 1. We will be running some interesting activities in the booth. So make sure you register to Money 2020 and visit us in Hall 1. There is free registration, Rohail. You can get a free ticket. So it does cover 80% of the show. 20% of the show is paid, but you don't have to worry about that. All right. So welcome again, everybody, for week 5. Super excited. Today we have an expert a technical expert, not just an expert, a technical expert in cloud infrastructure, data, and cybersecurity. She comes with practical background. So she's built her own fintech before, banking as a service. She's grown it, developed it, and exited it. So I consider her a serial entrepreneur, a technical serial entrepreneur. She's advised several financial entities, financial institutes on cloud data and cybersecurity, and has extreme knowledge when it comes to highly regulated environments such as fintech, of course. We're very happy today to have her with us, Martina, and she's going to elaborate and give us insights on cloud infrastructure, data, cybersecurity, which are extremely important in the fintech sector. Martina, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to pass it on to you. We're so glad to have you with us here and looking forward to learning from you today.
Thank you so much, Karim. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this session. I see there's quite a lot of you. So I'm going to skip the intro about myself, but just so you know, as Karim mentioned, I am technical. I've built before different payments platforms, different fintechs. So here I am to talk about the infrastructure and how you can benefit from being in the cloud and what does it exactly mean in the context of fintechs, because it is slightly different and it's extremely important that certain, let's say, risks and benefits are discussed properly. So jumping right into it, let's first establish what cloud infrastructure is. So you may be, I don't know, thinking about payments and you pay for something in the morning, maybe a coffee, maybe you received money from somebody else using different applications. There is a high chance that the transaction itself was performed using applications that are actually running in the cloud. So you're already exposed to it on a daily basis. You may not necessarily know about it. So it's a layer that is invisible to you, but it may change how you interact with things. It may change how the app that you are using is being developed, is being launched, how it's perceived as a product, how it can scale. So, what is cloud itself? Let's answer that question to begin with. IT resources, compute, storage, networking, security, etc., delivered on demand via internet. And I think a great comparison here would be that, let's say you want to have access to electricity. You just want to turn on TV, plug in its socket, and just use it, right? Back in the day, you would need to, well, build a power plant, and then you would have the electricity. Now you just need to plug the socket, and that's it. You're in. You've got electricity delivered to you. It's similar with access to the compute, to access to servers. And if you look at the bottom here, you have an example of what the servers look like, just like black boxes. And think about it from that perspective. You have your local machine right now, and the local machine can do only so much. So if you're gaming, you're gonna see the limits of it, what it can actually do. If you're running heavy applications on it, it's gonna probably get a bit chunky, a bit slow, and so on and so forth. So maybe you want to use something more powerful, some powerful compute servers, and those historically were available in data centers, which is great. Data centers are definitely something that makes sense when it's right to use them. However, it introduces certain level of complexity, because if you think about creating a product, you have your idea, you want to launch something, and you need to run it from somewhere. So the application itself needs to live somewhere. It lives in a little house like this. But then you would need to first plan ahead. So think about how many users you might have. Let's say 10 million. Okay, that means that we're gonna need, I don't know, 10 servers. That means we need to order. We need to get those delivered, installed in a data center. We need to get those configured. And we're also introducing hard limits, because we know that with these servers, you'll be only able to service 10 million users. If you have suddenly 300 million users, you need to order again and go through the process again. And that process is often quite long. It requires a lot of planning, a lot of effort, a lot of teams that actually run everything. Now, how does it change with a cloud? You just get those access to these resources with a click of a button, as simple as that. So instead of going through all the preparations, you can just focus on building your product. Certain layers, certain things are simply abstracted away from you. So when people say that, hey, cloud is just somebody else's computer, they're right. It is somebody else's computer, and it's just easy to access that computer instead of planning and buying things when you need them. Because with the cloud, you pay as you go. So I'm going to jump first towards the benefits for fintechs, and then I'm going to cover the deployment models. The benefits I mentioned already. So if you want to suddenly service more users, you have your app just took off, which is amazing. Then if you are on the cloud, that means that it's going to be very easy for you to scale up your infrastructure. You either configured already something that is called auto scaling. That means that the infrastructure will get bigger or smaller depending on your needs, or you just need to click one button and that's it. And it's instantly available to you, as opposed to in a data center where you would need to plan ahead, order, deliver, install, configure, and manage. That is a huge difference. This impacts the speed. The speed not just of delivery of the product, but how often you can experiment, how you can be prepared for your customers. And it comes down also to cost efficiency. Because if for some reason you have a bigger amount of users, yes, you're ready to scale up. But if for some reason you have smaller amount of users, you can just simply scale down. So instead of having 10 servers, you're going to have access only to two, and you're going to pay only for two. That is quite huge. That means that nothing will be idle. No things will be bought and unused. Everything that you buy is used. If you don't use, you don't pay. That impacts the budgets, that allows to create space in the budgets, again, for creating new products, for experimentations, for different things in a company. And I already touched on that, faster innovation and product launches. That's quite linked to what I've covered before. Again, you don't need to think about 5 weeks of planning, all those different, quite hard things to plan. You just click, you just go to the website of a cloud provider, You sign up with your email, you create an account, configure the billing, and you click, okay, let me create a compute engine, let me create a machine, a server, somebody else's computer that is going to be available for me that I can use for my purposes. That's extremely powerful. And with that comes the global reach, because now you can just decide, okay, I want that compute, that machine available for me in UK. And this time, actually, Netherlands, and the next day I want it in US, and tomorrow I want it in Saudi Arabia. You can pick and choose very, very easily. You just choose from a drop down what is the region that the machine should be in, and it's going to be created in that particular region. Underneath it all, what it actually is, it's still data centers, the servers, those guys, they don't go away. That's still there. It's just the way you access it becomes different, becomes easier if you're using cloud providers. With that, if you decide that you want to launch a product in new jurisdictions, in new countries, in new regions, you can just go ahead and do it very, very quickly without the planning, without the extra, upfront cost and investment. And quite as easily, you can decide, you can change your strategy and actually, I don't want to service customers in this country, I want to go to a different one. Then you can move it quite quickly because you didn't make a long-term commitment towards one particular region, buying all those different servers for a huge amount of money in a one particular data center. No, you can go ahead to the console of a cloud provider, you can just change it, and you can move the workload somewhere else. So those benefits allow for a lot of experimentation, a lot of playing around with the products, a lot of freedom to test ideas like never before. Now, when it comes down to deployment models, we already know what cloud is. Somebody else's computer, just easy to access resources. And on top of that, easy to access products that make development of your fintech much, much easier. You can imagine that if before you needed 10, 15 people to manage a given infrastructure, now you would need maybe one or two that would be able to deliver the same outcome and have the same impact on your organization. That is extremely important in case of planning of the budget, of how you create your company. Coming back to deployment models, there are quite a few. I mentioned already cloud providers, and when I say cloud providers, I typically mean public cloud providers such as Google Cloud Platform, AWS, Oracle Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and a few others. Why is it called public? Because the infrastructure on which the resources created for you are available is shared across all customers. And that is considered public because that's not something that belongs just to you, just to your company, which is the private cloud. Now, there are certain risks involved if you go into the public cloud, but you can take care of them if you configure your infrastructure properly. And there's a lot of materials on the best practices on how to secure your infrastructure. We're going to cover a few basic steps here as well. So that's your public cloud provider. Now, multi-cloud, that's quite an interesting concept, very, very popular right now as well. It means that instead of creating a vendor lock-in, so putting all the resources, all of your infrastructure of your application in one cloud provider, let's say Google, you decide, well, actually, we're going to run one part or one application on Google, but the other one on AWS, or maybe we're going to duplicate, run on both at the same time for different purposes. That means that's quite powerful because it means that if Google has some issues, you still have the redundancy with Microsoft and the other way around. So it creates a redundancy that in financial services is extremely important. Another very, very popular model is hybrid. What does it mean? That means that you combine two of both worlds. So you can have some on-premise infrastructure. The on-premise one we consider to be something that you run yourself. So you actually have those servers, you maintain them, you have your application installed on them and served from those servers. And apart from that, you have part of your workload created in the public cloud. So here, so part of it is with you on premise, part of it is in the public cloud. You can communicate between the two and you use it for different purposes. You can imagine that if you have extremely sensitive information, you might want to keep it completely private, completely on premise with you. Nobody else can access it from outside of world. There is not a chance that other customer uses. It's just not accessible. But if you want the scalability, if you want the huge power, you go with certain elements towards public cloud. Now, the hybrid model is extremely popular also among financial institutions because of the, I think, taking the best of the both worlds and answering those different concerns that come when you only use public cloud. Again, public cloud is quite useful, and that is, we're going to cover that later as well. But it's being used by many financial institutions, and I think right now you see the increase of adoption of public cloud as well. Also, quite notable. Right now, regulators, I think, are opening up a little bit to public cloud because the controls created around public cloud are getting better and better. And there is a much better understanding of how things are working and how we can mitigate certain risks. Coming back to cloud cyber protection and specifically in digital finance. So here you should think about the adoption right now that is happening. These days, you maybe won't be going to the store and paying with cash. You will be paying with your phone, with your watch, with something online, something digital. And that changes. That changes how we use the digital finance products, how we want them available to us. And the part of availability is extremely important because back in the day, you would send a payment on Monday, you would receive it on Thursday, and you would be like, well, it's fine, it's okay. Right now, you want everything instant, you want everything fast, you want it right this very second, you want to press send and already see the money in your account. It changed. The customer changed what it wants. So where does the cloud come in? Cloud comes in with a huge amount of resources available instantly to you. So if you're launching a product and you have increasing number of customers, a sudden spike in your customers or in the number of transactions, then suddenly, yeah, you're able to serve them all. Your application is not crashing, your application is running without any issues, and you can scale up, you can grow very, very easily. And the availability of the cloud, public cloud infrastructure is quite high. You can go to the websites of Google, Microsoft Azure, or the other providers and check exactly what are the SLAs that they're promising to you to perform, to keep such SLAs. If you were a 15 people team in a data center, is a lot of challenge. So away, that is all abstracted away from you. That is no longer your worry as a fintech company. That is somebody else's worry. And you move that responsibility on them to a certain level, which makes your life easier. So you can focus on building your application, building your product, and thinking about your customers, not what's really running, what the application is running on. As simple as that. We've got also open banking, quite popular right now, being definitely developed. And again, with cloud, it's quite easy. Cloud provides easy access to resources, to infrastructure, in a secure way. So you can have two different, companies communicating very securely over the APIs, but also creating those APIs very fast. So you don't need and exposing them very fast as well in a secure manner. That is quite powerful. We touched about the benefits from the perspective of launching new products. I think what I would like to note here as well, because we do have the cyber protection angle, is the fact that in the cloud, you have a lot of different features available to you that allow you to secure your infrastructure quite easily with a click of a button. The click of a button appears in my presentation quite often because it's, if you've never used cloud before, you're gonna be probably amazed the same way that I was many years ago, that it's incredible that you just click, okay, please enable the double protection for me, please make it all encrypted, just a click of a button, and also make it highly available for me as well, again, click of a button. So it provides features that, if used right, allow you to create your infrastructure in a secure manner and configure it so that nobody can access it, nobody can DDoS you, nobody can get into your application from outside. You can reduce the number of cyber threats. On top of that, you have services available through the cloud providers that, for instance, can check everything that happens with your infrastructure. And I mean, check all the internet traffic coming in and going through your application. That means that you have a lot of intelligence that you can get from it that turns into threat detection, that turns into analysis, that turns into products that are able to predict certain things for you. There is a lot of data that is flowing through all of that. And the reason the analytics or the threat detection is so powerful, because all of the data can be analyzed so quickly. And that is because of the big amount of resources available to you. Now, those services are available within any cloud provider, and they are something that is a complementary solution that allows you to build your product or application in a secure manner, deploy it so that it is safe in the cloud. Resilience. I mentioned already the fact that, for instance, you're creating a database, you're creating a data store. You want to store some information somewhere. You don't want it locally on your machine because your application is quite big. You want to store it somewhere in the cloud. And now you can just choose, hey, can you make sure that all of the information is not only stored in one place, in one region, can you duplicate it to another one? Can you duplicate it somewhere else? Can you make sure that if for some reason there is a natural disaster happening in that region, I'll be still able to access the data and it will be available to my customers? You can do it with checking a few checkboxes while creating the database in the cloud. It doesn't require you to think about all the logistics of, okay, so how many servers do we need? How to replicate, think about the processes of replication, even of like how to copy, how to put it somewhere else. No, it's a click of a button for you, because everything underneath has been abstracted away from the user. By user, I mean a platform engineer, a cloud engineer, so that they don't have to worry about those details. They think about the high level architecture of that design. And that makes things extremely fast. Why is it important in the context of financial services and fintechs? It's because the expectation is that when creating anything in fintech, it has to be always on. It has to be available, and it will be checked that is available to the customers. Everything about the controls and all the different things about protecting the customer at the very end of it all. The customer wants to have access to the wants to be able to, let's say, see how much money they have in their bank account, wants to be able to send that payment to a friend. And if those services are not available, that's bad for the customer. Financial services needs to be 24/7. Cloud allows for that and makes it in a way that is easy, that is also quite cheap for the companies to create. Now, cyber protection as a core. I mentioned that security integrated into cloud, but what does it really mean in practical terms? Because we use those words, but there's always something at the very bottom of it that is very straightforward. You can imagine, for instance, encryption. What does it mean? That instead of seeing words as you see here, cyber protection as a core, if somebody were to access information in a database, on the actual server, so the black box that I showed you before, they would just see blubberish. They would see random text and nothing else. They would not be able to decode it. They would not be able to see the proper words. They would just see random strings, random words, random text, letters. That would mean nothing. That is the encryption bit. And you can encrypt things with again, click of a button. So that's incredibly powerful. You don't need to think about these low level things. Those are available to you straight away out of the box. Monitoring, extremely important. I think when you're developing, a new application, when you're running your company, you want to always know what is happening. You never want to find out from your customer that your application is just not running properly. With the cloud, you have many different services available to you that allow you to monitor the health of the infrastructure and the health of the application as well. So you can imagine that an example would be you have 5 servers, so 5 no, maybe not those black boxes because you can have multiple in those black boxes, but let's say you have a few of those and you want to know at all times how are they behaving, like what is the usage of them, what is the memory usage, what is the CPU usage, are they okay, like are they responsive, are they accessible if the customer wants anything from them. And with monitoring that is enabled in the cloud, that comes out of the box for you, you're able to see it on a very nice dashboard, readily available to you. You don't have to build it. You don't have to think about too much about configuration. Everything is out there for you. You just need to access it. Just go to the right website and you get to see it. The monitoring is extremely important because if you have good monitoring, you're able to create a very good alerting. And you have good alerting, then you're never surprised. You just know everything that happens in your with your product, with your infrastructure, and you're able to proactively inform your customers in case you have any issues. Um, that means that if we have those different things, so the encryption bit, the monitoring bit, everything safe and secure, configured properly, that means that you can sleep at night. You don't have to worry that your application is going to crash and your customers are going to experience any issues. So looking from the perspective of cloud maturity, any company, when they think about going to the cloud, whether they're new or they're maybe like a company that has some historical applications. So we can cover first the historical applications, some where they're in a data center, and there will be a certain phases that you will go through. So first you will experiment. You will maybe choose one project, tiny project that you think, okay, let's give it a go. Let's build something in a cloud. Maybe that's going to be analytics tool. Maybe that's going to be a chatbot tool, something that you're going to host in the cloud, not on premise, not with your data center provider. Now, you'll probably need to think about the knowledge. So getting somebody on board or like growing that knowledge internally within your company that allows you to develop a solution like this. We call the experimentation phase because simply you're choosing something that is not crucial for the business at this point. You're choosing something where you want to learn as you go, and you just want to play around a little bit. Now, once you do this, once you're able to create an application that is running in the cloud, you chose the cloud provider, you know more. The goal is simply to learn. That is it. You need to learn. You need to perhaps also see certain benefits of the cloud providers and of being in the cloud that you can use when talking to the stakeholders in the company. So everything is about numbers, everything is about cost, about the benefits that cloud can bring. So once you've done this and you figure out, okay, actually we cut down the cost, we were able to move very fast. The next time around it's going to be 2 times faster when we do it. Let's move on. You go towards migration. So you decide to move your infrastructure from data center to the cloud. Now that is a huge task. Typically, depends how complex your previous solutions were, how many applications you have, what was the exact setup. It can be either a small project or an incredibly long one, but that is something that you need to plan as well. Now, if you move everything, you probably are going to see already some benefits. Those will be mainly about the cost itself and how your application, how the infrastructure is always on, and how you don't have to worry about certain layers of the infrastructure on which your application lives. After that comes the optimization. So now you want to make sure that you cut down necessary cost. Now you want to make sure that you use the cloud really in the pay-as-you-go model. So you don't have anything that is idle, anything that if you don't use something, you don't want to pay for it. That is the main thing. And you just want to maybe redesign a little bit or optimize something in your payment gateway or in your other parts of your application, whatever that is. You think about performance, you think about reducing costs and modernizing without disrupting the customer's experience. That's what happens. Now, when you get to the final stage, that is the full-on transformation. From now on, you don't have legacy systems that you think about. From now on, you think, okay, the next product we're going to build is going to be cloud native. And what does it mean? That means that you're going to look at the list of the services available with a cloud provider, and those services could be different. We're talking here about databases, we're talking here about streaming services. As an example, you might be thinking about developing a data-heavy application, something where you will be storing a lot of information that you need to quickly access and building cool analytics on top of that. You might be thinking then maybe, okay, let's use BigQuery. And right now you already thought about something that is available in the cloud. You already checked, okay, Google Cloud has this amazing tool called BigQuery, a service available to us in the cloud. And you're going to develop your application thinking about BigQuery already. So you're coming to use the services and design the architecture of your application while using cloud native services available through the cloud providers. So no longer the more basic old school blocks that you had before. So just the A, B database, but you're thinking already about the scale. You can already think and experiment a bit more. So that is the full-on transformation. So you can benefit from accessing services that were not available if you were going to the traditional environments as before with the data center, where you had certain limitations in the form of how quick an answer would be if you ask the database whatever question. Instead of waiting 2 minutes, it would be 5 seconds. And based on that, you can develop a better product. So that is the transformation phase. Readiness, that's something that if you want to be in the cloud, you need to definitely check all the boxes on this page. So regulatory clearance. So if you want to be in the cloud, you need to make sure that you open the dialogue with the regulator, and you check all the boxes with them. You need to satisfy all the requirements that are there in order to be able to move to the cloud. Talent and skills. You need to make sure that the people that are running your infrastructure are the right people. Now, many times, people that come from sysadmin background, or they've been running things in the data centers, they will have extremely good knowledge about how to manage the infrastructure. And really let's say the concepts are very similar in the cloud. It's just certain things are wrapped in boxes, in black boxes, and you don't need to think about the layers, what's inside. It's just a whole service available to you. You need to make sure that the talent that you have already on board or that you want to bring is able to fully unleash the power of the cloud in the right way, without you being stopped by, without choosing the old ways of doing things or old designs, using the full power of the cloud, the different services available, and re-architecting the applications in the right way. So talent and skills is extremely important. Now, at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to see the different resources, and I highly encourage you to check it out. There are many, many good materials available that allow you to jumpstart in the cloud, to just go to the cloud provider, test it out, see how it works, and then you'll probably see whether you're technical or not, what are really the possibilities, and what is the knowledge required in order to run the infrastructure. Vendor strategy, why that is important and why it has to be there. You need to think like anything, I believe. You need to think because the right vendor might unlock different possibilities for your product and for your company. If you're running something data heavy, you may go with provider A. If you're running something that requires streaming processes, maybe you go with a different provider. So the vendor strategy is important, and you need to think whether you want to commit only to one vendor, or maybe you want to work with a few of them. And you need to decide upfront and create the architecture that's going to allow it, and already have those conversations, and remembering that, again, all the checkboxes from the regulatory perspective need to be met. Risk and compliance frameworks, that's definitely something that everybody should think about. That is for the chief compliance officer, that is for the CISO and the CTOs to think about. Okay, so we are now in the, let's say, public cloud. What does it mean for the company? We want to be there. What does it mean? What are different exercises we should do? What are the checkboxes we should have? What are the controls we should introduce? What are the things that are our responsibility towards the customer, towards the regulator? And there are many different white papers, many different materials that are again available. I highly encourage anybody to read it, that outline exactly what you should be thinking about. But only if you checked all the boxes on this list, you can think, okay, we're ready for the move. We're ready to check out the cloud, and we're sure that we'll be able to manage the infrastructure in the right way and fully benefit from the possibilities that cloud brings. Now, cybersecurity and cloud, there are many risks, and I would say that there are many risks that are also available if you're not using the cloud. But here, maybe they're a little bit more probable because of the ease of access. So if you think about accessing the infrastructure in the data center, you would probably have, specific engineers. It would be highly technical people that are accessing this. Now with the cloud, all you need to sign up is your email address, billing information, and you are able to set up an account. You're able to already create a server, create infrastructure. You're able to deploy application using a tutorial, and there you are. There is a high chance that you didn't have the right training in all of this to understand that maybe you misconfigured something, and the misconfiguration introduced a possibility of an attacker to get in. Why that is important? So data breaches, ransomware, misconfiguration, insider threats, supply chain risks. The first two are coming from potentially the same part. So something was probably misconfigured, something was forgotten, something was not updated, and then the threat appears. The last one is more about maybe you committed only to one provider, maybe you committed only to one thing, and unfortunately that one is not available, and it impacts your product. So you need to think about the business continuity in it all as well. It is much easier with the cloud because you have so many options available, because there are many promises that the cloud providers make to you already, and you can benefit from it. So that is you're still in a very good position if you're in the cloud. How you can protect yourself from it. There are certain models that are introduced right now and they're very popular. That is, for instance, the zero trust security model and continuous monitoring. So if you think about the zero trust, how does it work? So previously, it used to be that if you knew that the request or the information, or let's call it something, comes from a certain address, it's safe to rely on it. That's it. That because it's coming from that address, it is allowed to talk to us. You can look at it from that perspective. The new way of doing things is, I mean, you're talking to me, but I don't trust you by default. I'm gonna ask who you are. And that is the main check. That is the main difference that has been introduced. That is the zero trust model. It's extremely powerful because it's just means everything is more secure. Because now you're asking that question every time: who are you? Am I okay to trust you? Previously, it would be like, okay, you came from that place, I trust you. But somebody could come from that place that is not right, and because they've been attacked. So that is the biggest change. The continuous monitoring I mentioned before, extremely easy to configure in the cloud. There are already ready dashboards for you. Just if you use the cloud provider and you go to the console, to the portal that is allowing you to manage your infrastructure, you'll see certain dashboards with all of the information about your cloud. You'll be able to already spot certain events happening in your infrastructure, to the point that I can tell you that if there is something going on in your infrastructure, the cloud provider, even though you haven't configured anything from the monitoring or alerting section, might contact you and say, hey, somebody's doing there is a weird stuff going on that machine, please check it. Because the cloud providers monitor everything themselves, and they have very robust systems doing that. The second thing that is that became extremely popular in the recent years is infrastructure as a code. And well, there are best practices for everything, right? What does it mean with infrastructure as a code? So previously, it used to be that you would go ahead and create something with a click of a button, with a click of a mouse. You would just like go ahead, input the configuration, input certain parameters. Please create it for me. It will be a manual action. Right now, you can do all of that, but you can write it in a form of a recipe. So you will have a little text that describes what it should be, what the infrastructure should look like. And you can always use it as a blueprint to create it. And because it's kept in a form, in a written form, that is easily reproducible, it is also something that can be easily checked by others, by your fellow engineer. That decreases the number of bugs. That means that you no longer go to the console, you no longer click things manually where you can suddenly just choose the wrong thing from the drop-down menu. You have everything written in a text form and you can check it. It's way less likely that you're going to make a mistake if you're using that solution. Now, regulatory alignment, SAMA, PSD2, FCA, all of those things. I mean, I'll repeat it probably a few more times. Extremely important to read all the documents that are produced by those bodies. They're very informative and they're there to protect the customer and they're there to make sure that you check all the right tools, you pick the right tools, you configure them properly. And if you stay up to date with the recommendations, you probably will be fine and your application will be safe. Your cloud infrastructure will be also in a very good shape. The certain practices and procedures that are introduced in companies are there for a reason. And it's extremely important to keep everything up to date. Cybersecurity in action. So the built-in compliance and the always on defense and the resilience at scale. The resilience at scale is the fact that if you suddenly have a spike in the number of users, in the transactions happening in your application, you're able to respond to that in a very dynamic way. So suddenly you have 10 million users instead of 1 million users, no problem. The application will just, the infrastructure will just grow for you and you'll be able to service those customers. If you were in the data center, you would need to be either over provisioned, so always ready for the 10 million users, or you would simply crash because you would not be able to respond to everybody because you set up everything for 1 million users. Always on defense, like I mentioned, the cloud providers monitor everything by default. On top of that, you can do monitoring, and the monitoring services are very easily configurable in the dashboards of the cloud providers. So it's even something that is quite easy to do for a non-technical person. And that removes a lot of overhead. So you can definitely find somebody in your company that is able to go ahead and do it the right way. Built-in compliance. That is something that when you develop and you need to create an architecture for the infrastructure of your applications, there's so many things you need to think about. And if you think of it as a, let's say, pyramid, at the very top, you have things that are like, okay, most people would probably know what to do with it. Then the deeper you go, it's more technical, closer to the black box servers. And with cloud, you don't have to worry at the stuff at the very bottom. Suddenly you worry mostly about the stuff at the top. And that means that when you think about all the things you need to cover, you don't have to go that deep in details to think about how many servers I need. You just think, okay, I need the cloud. I need some resources available for my application. When you think about that means that you're able also to think about the compliance more. You can think about the settings. And on top of that, certain settings, certain things are already done for you. That means that one less worry for you. And if you think about creating things in the cloud, you have very good documents readily available. You can, for instance, Google how to configure a Kubernetes cluster so that it is PCI compliant, how to configure PCI compliant infrastructure in Google Cloud. And you'll have multiple articles, you have public, general documentation of Google Cloud that shows you step by step how you do it. And that means that it's so easily accessible for you. That's why cloud is so powerful. Cloud is a driver of innovation in fintech. So we mentioned Cloud infrastructure provides scalability, agility, connectivity. It's so easily available for you, and you don't have to plan 2 months in advance that you will need something. You can just go to the console, you can click the button, you can have it ready for you in an instant. The data. So we mentioned already the fact about, oh, can very quickly go from 1 million to 10 million users if you're on the cloud. Yes, but also if you go that quickly, that means that there will be a lot of data being processed. Now, back in the day, you would need to think about the storage a lot. You would need to think that how much data you're storing, maybe just not store the stuff that is not necessarily that needed, because you need to think about the cost. Everything is pricey. Now you can have storage that is extremely cheap, ever growing, however you wish. And that means that having all that data, you can perform a lot of analysis on it. That enables new products. That means that suddenly you can have personalization, better personalization in your products. Credit scoring is a good example how you can go about it. Real-time analytics as well. That is another one. A lot of data, a lot of intelligence, a lot of analytics that comes from it, and you can store it for a long time. Cybersecurity builds trust, regulatory compliance, and customer confidence. So if your app is working the way it should be, it's again amazing. Together, you've got a platform that services your customers and is always on and allows you for experimentation and creating new products. Coming down to use cases, there are things you can see here examples from Saudi Arabia. You can see here global examples. You have already many different huge companies creating solutions specifically on the cloud. Some are using AWS, some Microsoft Azure, some Oracle Cloud, different companies, different needs, different cloud providers, but they are proof that you can definitely leverage the power of the cloud to go fast and go very easily to new markets. Now, coming back to key challenges, well, you need to always think, if you go to a new region, what is the regulatory complexity in a given region? When you think about data, you need to think where the data will live. Very often, you need to check whether the cloud provider has available regions for you that are important for your customer base. Vendor lock-in can be addressed through going through, let's say, multi-cloud, so that you don't just rely on one provider. There are security and privacy risks. Always, you need to think about misconfigurations. You need to think about insider threats, and remain always on top of it all. So being on the cloud doesn't mean it is not your worry. It means certain things are easier for you to do, but you still should be on top of it. And cost management is something that is always a challenge, because things are so easily available for you. It means that you can quite quickly create a lot of infrastructure that costs a lot of money. So therefore, you should always remember what are the limits that you want to go for, and you should check exactly what are the features you're using, what are the services you're using. Now for the trends, multi-cloud and hybrid adoption is definitely on the rise. Cloud native security solutions are coming in, so the zero trust, confidential computing, AI-powered threats. So I covered the fact that if you have a lot of data, you can run a lot of different things with it. And with cloud, that is easily available. The same goes for the AI data analytics at scale. You can run a lot of computations. You can run a lot of analytics based on the data that is there, that you can store for many years, and that is not that expensive anymore. Sustainability focus, that is one of the key trends. So very often you'll get the question, which of the cloud providers is the green one, and make sure that their data centers are running in the right way. So it's something that you can definitely Google that quite easily. You can check on the internet, check the statistics, and make a very informed decision. These trends are continuing right now. I believe for the region right now, the biggest one is the hybrid cloud adoption. I now will present the resources as well. The presentation will be available to you later as well. On the resources, there are some which are slightly more technical. There are some which are for people coming more from the business background, to help understand what cloud is, how to create certain things, understand the concept, so that the business folks can have a very good conversation with the deep technical engineers and come up together with ideas, brainstorm things, and strategy for the infrastructure for the company. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I think right now we'll go into the Q&A. Just one note, you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. You can check my website. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on my website. You'll be able to see my email address as well, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to help out or answer any questions.
Martina, thank you so much for this session. I'm getting a lot of questions from the audience here, and I think you provided a lot of information, some technical and some use cases, so that was very useful. One of the main questions I'm getting is when we go on the cloud service provider has access basically to any data that we have and can actually take a look at it. How do I trust that they're not? How do I trust that it's secure from the cloud service provider itself, that dependency on the cloud service provider? How do you manage that?
Of course. So it's quite similar in the same way that if you had your infrastructure in a data center, you wouldn't want the data center staff to be able to access your the information you send and you store with them. With the cloud providers, there are certain practices that they do in terms of who has access to what, who has access to the server rooms, who has access to certain levels of the infrastructure. So by default, the service providers are not able to access your information. To them, it's all blubberish. To them, they're not able to decrypt whatever you're storing. And what's more important, there is not a chance that if you have two customers and those customers develop something on the public cloud, in real life, let's say those two applications would be stored on the same server, that there will be boundaries between the two always, so that there is never any leakage going on between the two. You can trust, and these are the promises of the public cloud providers, that data is safe and data is not accessible to them. It's accessible and to you. So everything is encrypted at that point.
So promises are great, and there was a question related to the promises, the SLA between the cloud service provider and the user of the cloud, and what are the things that one should make sure they look at and ensure there when it comes to those SLAs and those agreements with cloud service providers.
I would highly encourage anybody to understand the shared responsibility model that outlines very, very clearly what are the responsibilities of the cloud provider and what are the responsibilities of the user, so the company that is using the cloud. With that, then you can go on and understand the SLAs. All of that makes together, like, provides you the great context. Why is that important? Because as an example, if you go on and create 20 different machines and say by mistake, but I mean, I didn't mean that, it's unfortunately you created that, you need to pay for it. If you configured, let's say, infrastructure, you created a server, a compute engine as an example, and you opened it to the world, which means anybody from the internet can access it. And because of that, you created a lot of traffic coming in. That created a lot of cost. And you can be like, but I didn't mean that. Again, that configuration was your decision. The cloud provider gave you options whether to open it or not to open it. So their responsibility was to provide the underlying infrastructure and the options. Now, how you configure that is your responsibility. There is a very good material available with any public cloud provider that outlines exactly what is it that you need to think about, what is it that the cloud provider needs to think about. As an example, they would need to think about the physical security of the data centers, where the servers are, on which the compute engine was created. That is their responsibility. How you configure exactly that compute engine, that is yours. Now, when we think about SLAs, different products have different SLAs. Typically, the most important to you, depending if you think about, let's say, database, you might think about the performance, you might think about the uptime, and that is quite important to you. If you think about networking services, maybe the throughput, the amount of information that is flowing. So depending on that, you check the SLAs that are important to you. And when you go from data center to the cloud, you can definitely come up with the numbers or the things that would be important to you if you were in the data center. Now check what are the promises and what are the SLAs if you are in the cloud for exactly the same things, because the concepts remain the same.
In reality, can you say that all data on cloud is always encrypted? Because that is, or is there clouds that don't actually encrypt data? I mean, that's a simple question, I'm assuming, but I'll let you maybe talk about this feature specifically.
So it depends, what do you mean by that question? So if you think from the perspective, is the public cloud provider able, or the staff of that public cloud provider able to access your information? No.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be possible. If you think about the encryption, yes, you need to think that you will need to check the box, encrypt at rest, encrypt in transit, encrypt. You will need to check those boxes because you may be opening up, but not necessarily to the stuff of Google, of AWS. You may be opening up to the threat that would be present within the your infrastructure that is not necessarily your application. So that is the part where you can misconfigure things. But if you worry that the data would be available to the cloud provider's staff, that is not going to be the case.
Well, how do you manage, Martina, dependencies, or what recommendations do you have on managing dependencies? I know you talked about hybrid, you talked about multi-cloud, but we are getting a couple questions on how do I ensure I'm not dependent, the lock-in periods that I'm involved in, how can I move around? Can you please elaborate on that?
Of course. So it all depends what is your situation right now. And the reason right now why there is a rise specifically for hybrid cloud in the region is because historically everybody was in the data centers. Now people want to leverage the power of the cloud. So they create hybrid infrastructure, have part of their infrastructure on-prem, part of it in the cloud. How you could benefit from that? For instance, you can have your application in both places. You can service it from your on-prem, and in case there is a spy, you can go for the cloud. Or part of your application can be on the cloud, part of it can be on-prem, depending on the features. Now, how do you manage kind of like the lock-in? How do you think about it from like a project perspective? So first of all, analyze the different cloud providers, analyze the agreements a bit, understand what you can afford, what you can commit to, whether you want to go with the pay-as-you-go model. If yes, you can switch from one cloud to the other quite easily. Now, saying quite easily, it doesn't mean instant when you're changing from one provider to the other provider because there are differences in services they provide. But you can architect your application in a way that you will be still able to benefit from being in the cloud. So having certain resources very quickly available to you, but not relying on certain services available only with one cloud provider. So when you think about your application, it can be just a black box that you put on a server, that you put on a new other database that it talks to, and you can keep it very, very basic so that the same application itself, so the code of the application would not need to be that heavily changed. If you wanted it to be run on the cloud, if you wanted it to be run in the data center, you can do it that way to begin with. What does it give you? That gives you a very good ability to quite quickly migrate from one provider to the other in case of any issues. You can already use two cloud providers at the same time and architect your application in such a way. That's how you avoid the vendor lock-in. That's how you can plan ahead as well. My recommendation is to always think about the infrastructure. How would you like to see it in 5 years? Make sure that you don't close too many doors and that you remain flexible as well. Especially in financial services, I think we need to, where the regulations change, expectations change, you need to remain very vigilant. You need to make sure that you, on top of it, you know exactly what cloud providers are giving you. You're able to, show that if you needed to switch, whether that is your business continuity or disaster recovery, you would be able to switch from one provider to the other. And I think with cloud providers, it's even easier than with data centers because the switch won't take multiple weeks. If you architect it properly, you could do it just like a switch because you could have readily available infrastructure waiting with a different cloud provider, just scale down so that you don't incur too many costs.
Martina, in this age where data decentralization, the blockchain, and digital ledgers in general are coming into play, and we're seeing a lot of solutions come in, what role does the cloud play in that?
Cloud provides you easy access to different regions, easy access to make sure that if you want to service customers from a specific part of the world, you're able to, because the compute is already available in that region. So you can ensure that the data, the information will be serviced from that region. Now, when you talk about decentralization, if you talk about blockchain, yes, it comes in play because blockchain is all about being everywhere, not in one place, and the agreements, right? So having a lot of infrastructure available with a click of a button all around the world allows you to create solutions that meet the expectations.
Martina, I'm still getting a lot of questions, but I want to thank you. I just want to mention something to the audience here. I'm seeing that a lot of them are saying goodbye. Please remember, we still have 3 weeks to go. I expect to see you all next week and the week after and the week after. So I'm hoping to see you there again. If you misunderstood that today is the last session, it's not. Today is week 5. I'm going to take another couple of questions, Martina, if you are okay with that, and then we can wrap up if you don't mind.
Of
We're
course.
uh, so we're getting some questions related specifically to Saudi Arabia. Can you maybe elaborate on the regulators' requirements when it comes to cloud and cybersecurity in Saudi Arabia, specifically for fintechs and banks? Because I know there's a bit of a difference between fintech requirements and bank requirements. I think it's something it's that important to shed light on if we can.
Of course. So right now in the kingdom, first of all, you have all the cloud providers that are coming. You already have Oracle Cloud, you have Google Cloud available. You can experiment. You've got Microsoft coming, you've got Azure now that will be there, which is amazing. That gives you so many options. In terms of where to start, how to know what you can do, what you cannot do, and what kind of knowledge to get on board. So I would definitely encourage you to open a dialogue with Fintech Saudi. That would be my first recommendation. Second recommendation, there is materials available that were produced by SAMA, by NCA, that are about cloud security frameworks, specifically for the kingdom, what are the requirements, what are the controls that the company should implement internally. In terms of what you can actually do as a company for the cloud adoption, if you're a fintech and you're thinking, okay, we want to be cloud native, we want to be in the cloud, where do I start? First, get familiar with the recommendations of the regulator. The regulator is definitely your source of proof. Because as a company that will be dealing with payments, working in a operating in a fintech space, you need to make sure that you do everything by the book and that you mitigate any risks that may arise from using the public cloud. Of course, there are risks if you're using also data centers, just the risks may be different. So it's a slightly different world, which means that if you come from the more traditional environment that was data center based, now you will need to still address certain worries. They will be just different. So prep yourself for that. Make sure that you bring on board somebody that is able to understand how cloud works, how cloud operates. Open the dialogue also with the cloud providers already there in the kingdom. I'm sure they'll be able to provide you with with a bit of help in terms of the right courses, the right resources and materials to help you get going. And the next stage, really experiment. Just try it out. Just try it out yourself. And you can definitely set up some account with Google Cloud, and you can do it even first, not as a company, but even just as a person, and experiment, try it out, see how it works, and then come up with a plan. How are you going to, what would be the architecture you would be going for, whether you would be getting the approvals. Check what are the approval steps to be in the cloud specifically that you need to meet as a company, as a fintech company. As I mentioned, there is a lot of already ready materials available that were produced in the recent years. How to get started. But my main recommendation is the way to get started is really to get started. So prep on the regulatory side, understand what is it that you need to address, but at the same time, start preparing on the technical side. So make sure you have somebody on board that is able to implement the cloud and the infrastructure in the cloud for you.
My last question, because we're really running out of time here. I'm sorry for everyone who has questions that I haven't been able to ask here. But Martina, SMEs, startups, fintechs are always complaining about the costs associated with cloud and cloud infrastructure and cybersecurity. We want your piece of advice on how to make sure our cloud is optimized, what sort of skill set we need to make sure we have in the company to ensure that there's constant optimization happening and that the costs are kept as reasonable as possible. Because like you said, one single click of a button and you can triple your invoice for the month.
Yes. My recommendations. So there are many FinOps practices. So FinOps is the let's say the part where you focus on the financial operations of a company, specifically cloud computing. There are a few ways to minimize your cloud costs. These are best practices. So you pay for what you use. You can reserve instances if you know that you'll be operating for a year, for instance. Therefore, the price will be cheaper. Different cloud providers offer different programs. They offer also credits that you can use. On top of that, honestly, monitoring. You can set up, for instance, budgets. That means that if you reach $10,000 that you spend this month, you're going to get an alert. So that is something that you don't need to like constantly keep checking the budget. You'll get the information when that happens, and then you can react. But on top of that, have somebody that understands that it is their responsibility to keep optimizing the cost. How you can do it, you can think about it from the perspective of how well your application is written. Like, does it need X amount of compute power to perform an action for you, or 10X? You can optimize at that level. So the application optimization is the first thing to do. The second thing, never leave any resources idle. Make sure that when you're in the cloud, you really use what you pay for, and benefit from the auto scaling features that are available in the cloud. That is the first thing. And think about cloud cost not only from the perspective of the infrastructure that is there to serve your customers, but also the infrastructure that is there to allow your engineering team to develop the product. In both cases, you'll be able to find many different ways to cut the cost and keep it quite optimal for a very long period of time. So I think the words that you're definitely looking for and want to check afterwards is best FinOps practices.
And for all of you who are just now building your startups or fintechs, I'll let you know that hyperscalers in Saudi Arabia do offer free credits to get you started. So that's also something to keep in the back of your mind when you are setting up your infrastructure and your cloud environment to launch your fintech. Martina, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for staying a bit longer. And thank you for this invaluable information that you've provided. For everyone else, we look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you enjoyed this session. And yeah, see you next week. Thank you, Martina.
Thank you.